Okay, this is Coming Home with the Vienna Symphonic Library Dimension Strings. Okay, starting out. If you are familiar with the dimension strings, you know that these were samples that were recorded with every individual string player. So you've got 8 first violins, which I've split up into A and B, so 4 and 4, 6 violas, 6 cellos, and 4 double basses. They've taken this library and put it in the Synchron player and basically added these impulse responses based on the position where each individual player would sit on that soundstage. The primary benefit of recording every player individually is that you have direct control over all of them. So for this particular piece, I decided to split everything with just normal Divisi, except for the double basses. They're in unison the whole time. And the reason for that, first, so I can have more than 5 parts going at once. The next is to blend different articulations within the same section and the same melody. And lastly, for times whenever the articulation is the same, such as this opening Sol G legato, I can have 2 separate performances. So I can record violin, well, the outside players. Whenever you do a Divisi, you'd maybe label it as inside-outside. That's how normally a string section would approach a written down Divisi part. I've seen inside-outside. I've heard of A3. If it's just supposed to be 3, I've seen Divisi 3 ways, and then they just, string sections just kind of naturally, they know what to do. Most people, by the time they're playing in an orchestra, professionally or even as amateurs, have performed music by like Debussy or Ravel, which does huge amounts of Divisis, or Strauss. Strauss has large string sections that are divided 6 ways, just 2 people on each or 3 people on each note of the chord he's building or part he's running. Anyway, so whenever I play in the violin 1A, that's sort of the base of that melody. And then violin 1B, I record a separate track on it because that will give a little bit more inconsistency in the timing and volume, which brings a little bit more individuality to the performance. So those are the main three reasons. Blending articulations, which is real helpful sometimes. You get to have your Divisi parts, obviously, so you can compose music and be able to render it in a convincing way. And the last is to get multiple performances on one part. So in this opening, I wanted to use Sol G patches. Sol G means that this violin is only going to use the G string, which is their lowest string on a violin. And so what I've done is I've split this up into inside, outside, Sol G, legato, and then I've created a dimension here called norm and port. That stands for the normal and the portamento. And I've combined both of these regular vibrato patches into a stacked parallel mode articulation that is controlled by CC21. And it doesn't matter, you can assign what it's controlled by to anything, you know. But I chose 21 because that's how my system is set up. So what I do to get some convincing portamento that I can manipulate the length of in a sort of way, I blend these two articulations together. So at the top, 64, you know, it's a 50-50 or whatever. And here it's more normal all the way down, and here it's more portamento. So if it's at 127, it's all port, and if it's all the way down, it's all normal articulation. And so let me solo this, just the first violins, to give you an idea of how some of that might blend. So this is just normal. And remember, you do hear a little bit of that glide or that hesitation. That's because it's a Sol G string. So they won't switch strings to make things like sort of more seamless. But the trade-off here, and why this is so expressive and musical, is because that G string, whenever you're playing a melody only on it, whenever it gets above the D, just above middle C, it has a very high tenor-esque quality to it, that where the vibrato is sharper and it's grittier and just in all the cool ways. So it's a very common thing by guys like Gustav Mahler to do that. You can listen to Gustav Mahler's Ninth Symphony. The last movement is an adagio, and the whole opening of that is the first and second violins in unison playing the melody all on Sol G. It's a really, really great effect. So, knowing that effect, I've wanted to use Sol G for these. There's the portamento. You saw I crept it in there. So it kind of blends it. So with everything on top, you get this nice opening phrase. We'll check some of this automation here. So, and also to get a really convincing legato section, Control 22 here is the attack. I'm writing that pretty hard, and I'm doing that because I want to sort of round off the edge of the transition a little bit. And depending on the note, depends on how loud that needs to be. I've also got the release turned up a little bit above normal. And of course that automation on CC21, which is my vibrato dimension control. Now, this section, we've moved into the mutes. I think it sounds really, really good using the muted string up there, which the mutes come with dimension strings too. or synchronized dimension strings too. And so what I have done is taken that library and merged it all into a single instance of the player. So I have all the mutes on one key switch. And so all of these patches are muted. And then like on things such as the tremolo, I've got my Soltasto stuff, which is dimension strings 3. I've got those Soltasto articulations and things like the short notes. So your normal played short notes and then your Soltasto stuff. And you get to pick, this is like the length or the long notes, sustain. You know, it's pretty straightforward. Again, on the Soltasto, I blended the normal and portamento, and it really is convincing. I highly recommend. In the stock presets that you get, those patches, there isn't a patch like this, so you have to make it yourself, but it's not too difficult. I think there's plenty of tutorials around about how to create your own patches in the Synchron player. So let me go back to this. I mean, to me, that legato sounds indistinguishable. And again, I'm riding the attack pretty hard on some of that. You'll also notice, I mean, my mod wheel is my velocity crossfade. I ride that pretty hard on this stuff. And I think it should be performed not just, you know, not just drawn in later. It'll be more musical if you actually work on your skill riding those wheels or faders or however you manipulate a MIDI CC. Here you can see that I blend the sustain and tremolo. And then the final articulation is this slow Soltasto, really quiet, you know. If you don't know what Soltasto is, it basically means you're playing kind of up on the neck a little bit on the string instrument. And so it makes the sound a little bit more hollow and softer. But hollow's not the right... I guess it is kind of hollow in a way, but you would do it to... I mean, it kind of takes on like a flute-like quality. The overtones don't ring in a normal way, and it's not as reverberant, but it's still a very, very pretty tone. And so I highly recommend utilizing those articulations in your own composition. I want to talk about when to use the legatos versus when to use the sustains. So right here, we've got this kind of descending thing in the first violins. A lot of people, myself included, or I used to, I guess, will keep it on a legato patch for these, I mean, this is like whole notes, right? Kind of, or like half notes. You don't want to use the legato on that because the transition sample is going to be a little bit harsh or abrupt. Not harsh is the wrong word. It's going to be a little bit abrupt. Use the sustains and kind of, you know, I'll zoom in here. You know, you kind of overlap them a little bit, not to where you can hear it like too clearly, but use the sustains instead because that will give you a more natural changing of the bow or slur for a passage that is this slow in tempo. It's pretty nice, you know? Okay, lastly, this humanized control is your friend. In my controls, I've got a little bit of delay scale and tuning. Every single individual patch here has a different delay depending on what bubble it is in this sequence, and a different randomized tuning curve. The strength of the dimension strings is that you can have each individual player approaching the attack of each note a little bit out of tune before they kind of find it. I would definitely keep the humanize amount in the tip of your brain whenever composing with the dimension strings, because that's what's going to really add a lot of realism. Of course, if you go too far with it, it just sounds like your strings are out of tune. But tastefully and realistically, you can dial this parameter in and make it sound extremely convincing. So that is my quick overview of the dimension strings by Vienna Symphonic Library.